Broadcasting.
All right, so I'm going to start with the intro, and then we'll jump onto it. Oh yeah, Schwieber just got back. He's not going to be here. All right. Thank you everyone for joining us. This is the NCBBL Inaugural Season Weekly Wrap-Up for Week 2. I am your host, Straum, and my guests today are Mad Catter, Skilfer, and Dorn Deutschien, otherwise known as Arkin.
Hola.
Hello. Glad to have you with me. So this has been quite a interesting week coming off of the first week, which was very bloody. This league took off in the first week. It went on a running start, but this week it seemed to have slowed down and become much more even-paced.
Agreed.
Yep. It was not near. The scores weren't ran up as much. The damage done to the teams wasn't anywhere near as bad as it was in the previous, in both terms of fatalities and just injuries. Everything. It was
my 46 successful blocks against Straum might disagree though.
Oh, but there were no injuries.
Yeah, but half your team was on the ground for half the round, so.
Yeah, the games this week were much more close than the last week.
Yep.
In every aspect you can think of. So.
Yep. And speaking of my game versus Dorn here, let's talk about that one. So this game, I thought it was quite an interesting game. It was a tough matchup for both of us. Me being a much more agile team and him being a much more bashy team, so we had to play to our opponent's weakness and not play to their strength. And in doing that, I think the most notable thing about that game is the great Ursa got her first kill.
That was pretty interesting right there. Very first.
Yeah, still bitter. Killed my Tomb Guardian that actually had leveled up. I did not get a chance to use Mighty Blow, so thank you very much for that.
Yes, that was the plan. I didn't expect it to be a fatality, but, you know, good things happen.
God, and regeneration failed on that too.
But I think it was a tough match, and really I think what allowed me to come out the victor in a very, very close match was positioning. Because I can tell you what, my luck was not there.
It was not, but I would also throw in possession as well, because you controlled the you pretty much controlled the ball possession most of the game.
Yeah, according to the match statistics, it was 100%.
Yeah, I did not have possession. I could not pick up anything with sure hands.
It wasn't quite 100%. It was
It says about 43%, but
43%.
Because the ball was on the ground a lot.
Yeah.
But
however, to Tumiake's 0% ball possession.
Yep.
Just insane.
And, you know, the opponent can't get a touchdown if they don't have the ball.
Exactly.
Sadly.
So, I think it leads into the next match, the Stupid Stunties versus Basic Team, which probably was the most interesting match of this week.
Definitely, I would say that was it's a game of the week.
Chainsaw.
Exactly. I'm on the wrong week. Oh, there we go. Yeah. So. On that one there, with starting at the beginning, it just got, you could tell that Nemo's whole purpose was just to go in there and destroy other players.
As possible.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Use those special units to the most
But-
that he can and get as much damage out.
But he didn't start out using using the special units to just injure. I think he was still trying to figure out how to do that, and then he was like, "Oh well, I'm going to start chainsawing like down players." You know.
Yeah, well, it's much harder for a downed player to punch a chainsaw back.
This is true.
And especially when you use that chainsaw with other goblins around to help move armor around and make that chainsaw more effective. I think Nemo really hit the nail on the head with making the most of his chainsaw.
He did suffer 3 expulsions that game as well.
I don't know. I think the ref is taking money under the table because that it didn't seem to do much.
Yeah.
But I think what we have to touch on, besides how much of a bloodbath it was for both teams, the just so far a hero. We already have a martyr for this league, the hero Nuffbrig. That goblin was gonna go places. He was going far. He had such a bright future, and he did his civic duty to that team. He got up on that troll and he got his head bit off.
Yeah, it was a spectacle indeed.
It's
Nuffbrig-
worth noting that Nuffbrig was the MVP for
Yes,
Stupid
he
Stunties
was.
that match.
Yeah, as he should be. What a hero that goblin was. So on to the third match of the week, the Bastards of Uruk versus the Cold-Blooded Root Beer. Now, what an interesting match this was.
I'm going to hold off my comments till a little bit later. I'll let Arkin start on this one, since both Skilfer and I are the coaches of that matchup.
Yes.
Being brutally honest with you guys, it was a very dull and boring match, and either of you could have won if you would stop taking stupid risks.
Yeah, speaking of the risks, it did seem that the Lizardmen took a few unnecessary risks, and I'd say the Elves didn't take enough risks. There was definitely room for both teams to have won that match, but they walked away with a tie instead.
Yeah, there was some bad judgment, some bad mistakes on that one. On my part, I totally. Due to a conversation going on during the match, I totally thought that my skinks could only move 7 spaces, so I didn't think it could make a touchdown, and so I tried to do that stupid handoff, and that just stalled the game even longer and made us think even harder. When I could have easily just marched it into the touchdown with the skink that had the ball. So I'm kind of upset about that. That was my real boneheaded moment, because I don't need a Croxagore for a bonehead when I do things like that.
Yep, it's definitely a thing that happens, especially in a very tactical match such as that one, where Lizardmen were doing their best to be Lizardmen and Elves are doing their best to be Elves. And you're trying to make both of those things work.
And the Croxagore just could not get that prehensile tail to do anything.
Yeah, that tail, it just wasn't in the place. Always just grasping at air instead of grasping at elves.
Oh, that agility forward works its magic.
Stupid elf bullshit.
Yes.
I think that touchdown.
I think that whole match
touchdown,
was yeah.
I think that first touchdown, that pass into the end zone from halfway down the field, I think that epitomizes the elf bullshit that was.
I wasn't even mad at that. I was not.
I wasn't either. It was actually quite impressive. Didn't expect that to work.
I was.
Well, of course you were.
But that whole match was us complaining about elf BS or
And the screen.
lizard BS.
That was the other thing.
Yep, you did make an effective elf screen.
Both of
It
us
was
did actually.
Yeah.
Wait,
It
Lizardman
is
made an
hard to
effective
get through a
elf,
good elf
elf
screen.
screen?
Lizardmen have really no choice. Lizardmen with their skinks play half and half like orcs and half like elves, almost. But yeah.
They're
Speaking
like-
of the,
Go ahead.
please go on.
Well, I was gonna say it's essentially like having gutter runners with black orcs.
Yeah, it's actually very similar to that, except the gutter runners get hurt easier.
Yeah, because stunty.
But speaking of relying on the croc score, that brings us to our last game, the Lawful Good versus the Clan Thrust Plunder. And oh boy, that troll, man. He definitely trolled.
Yep. He ruled stupid 44% of the time.
he was not not very effective during that whole match.
And whenever he did hit, he got pushes.
Yeah.
Nuffle just wasn't there for him.
Yeah, he was not as effective as I'm sure Asylum would have preferred. And I think
any
that's really where Lawful Good's lack of a Minotaur helped him out, is he didn't have that sort of unreliability.
And let's not downplay Galen's greatly enhanced use of his Beastmen throughout the match as well, making full
Yes.
use of those horns.
Oh man,
And also
it
just
was-
having great positioning.
Yeah, the positioning was there, and the fact that he only ever blitzed with Beastmen to really maximize on that strength 4 potential in his team, it really was quite a sight to behold. It was very, very well played.
There,
And I believe
both
there
teams
were
had a
one or
lot of
two
bad
serfs.
positioning as well. I will throw that out there. There were some questionable decisions when it came to that sideline brawl had so many chances to surf people out of the way. It was not even fun.
Yeah, the missed surf opportunities there was really quite impressive.
And there were already a few that were taken advantage of that match.
But
Yeah,
there
there
were. It was very easy to have a significant more amount of them that were given.
And that, especially since in the first brawl on the side, I believe Asylum was in a much stronger position. He could have really used those serfs to really get a number advantage on Lawful Good, and that would have definitely helped him out getting that ball down the pitch.
Definitely. Ultimately, though, the how the game was won, a pass and a stall. I mean, that's
It was all about the economy of action, and I mean on both teams, the economy of action was a little interesting. Lawful Good did a lot of punching before getting people up off the ground, and really, Clan Thrust Plunder got just a few bad, unlucky rolls, and he had a lot of orcs, get socked while they were doing some punching, and that really cost him a lot of time.
Suffered a black orc injury as well.
Yep, which is going to hurt him in the long run.
Almost suffered an orc death, but the Oppo came in for the save on that one.
where
Yep, they had,
apothecaries come in handy.
Yep.
putting brains back in skulls and bones back in bodies. So pretty much covers the week here. We touched on the game of the week, the stupid stunties versus the basic team, and just how much of a bloodbath that was. That really was almost a straight continuation of week one, while the rest of this week slowed down. But I think you can really feel the amount of intensity going into this week, with no team having scored more than one touchdown this week. Even on the scores are either 1-0 or a tie is at 1-1. And you can really tell that all the coaches are definitely picking up in skill.
Speaking of which, shall we talk about next week's matches and potential predictions?
We will.
Yeah.
I think we got to touch back on the death of the week. That's had two to choose from. Ursa with her mighty thrust and snappy jaws versus our hero goblin, Nuffbrig. I mean, just taking it to, like any hero goblin should.
What a martyr. I mean, I put my vote to Nuffbrig. I think Nuffbrig easily outclasses the amazing bone-crunching power of the Great Ursa, simply because of how much of a hero he is.
Well, they both had their hilarity with it. The fact that Nuffbrig was MVP with the death, and then for Ursa, the thing it has going for it was literally the opening turn of that match.
It was more violent.
It wasn't the opening turn, but it was the first block made.
No, it was the opening move. It was the very first thing.
It was towards the end of the turn.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, blocks should always come after safer things, the economy of action. But yeah,
still
first
the opening
block.
turn.
But yeah, I definitely vote Nuffbrig.
Definitely, I agree.
Yeah, Nuffbrig all the way.
Unanimous decision.
Easily, death of the week. What a hero.
I guess that takes us into our upcoming schedule.
Yep.
I guess
for week 3, we have Lawful Good versus Cirque du Glace. I think that's going to be an interesting match, but since I am one of the coaches in that one, I'm going to abstain from saying anything until probably last. So, Katter, go ahead and take that away.
All right, starting with Lawful Good at Cirque du Glace. This is going to be an interesting matchup because, again, it is easy to get psyched out going up against any of Straum's teams because, I mean, like I've done it, everybody's done it because Straum has a very high win percentage out of all the coaches out here. So I think that's going to be the key to that game is keeping a level head for both sides because Straum can psych himself out as well with the bad rolls if that happens against him.
I would have to say that it's like the majority of week 2. It's going to be very close. However, if my match had any type of prediction that could possibly happen, I would say it would go 0-1 in Straum's favor. It's more of a matter of if Galen's positioning can keep him from leaving.
I think the main thing is if Galen gets the rolls he needs early on. I think Galen is going to try and cripple especially Straum's catchers early on into that match. And if he is successful in incapacitating them early, it will go a long way to benefit him down in that game. And if God forbid if the weather is awful as well. I mean, when my High Elves versus the Straum Circus, that was one of the biggest factors in our match in its entirety, is not having half of our teams the entire match.
I think what Galen has to watch out for is the bear. Ursa,
Yes,
if
that
she's doing what
prehensile
she's
tail,
supposed to be, yeah, prehensile chain, you should probably say. But
yeah, that's right.
but I think if Straum uses her right, it's going to cause a lot of damage, and it'll come down to positioning on this. I'm going to give this a 1-0 victory for Straum, unfortunately, but it might tie.
It could. I'm putting all of my weight on how the opening turns go, and determining how the rest of the game will probably play out. Of
Agreed.
course, then again, me and you did that as well, Catter, with ours, and that had no repercussion on the rest of the game. So
True that.
that's also possible. But I'm gonna have to go with the same here. I have an inclination to just lean towards agility teams anyhow, just because of their capability to just get around a lot of bashier teams, and if they can do that, a lot of times they'll just run away with it. And with the leap and such that the Circus has at their disposal, it just makes them more potent at doing that than even a lot of other teams. And like you said, if Straum is able to utilize the bear effectively and is able to tie up a lot of those beastmen, or even worse, if he's able to tie up the majority of Galen's Chaos Warriors, it'll be detrimental to his team easily. But the same goes for if Galen's able to get the opening salvo off on Straum and knock out especially those catchers early on. Because the Circus has some trouble dealing with the ball. Even though it shouldn't, it does.
Yeah, the Circus lacks reroll skills. Sure hands, dodge, block. So we're very reroll heavy.
Well, that's another thing to mention is the rerolls. Straum does have significantly more rerolls per half than Galen does at only 2. And I feel like that might have more effect. It depends on if Nuffle is in Straum's favor. If it's not, then that advantage will be completely lost very early, like it was in our match.
Or my match.
Yeah.
It was lost in the first 4 turns. But I think going into this, my biggest worry is the fact that Galen has figured out how to effectively use horns, because he can, since the majority of my players are strength 3, it's much easier for him to just charge a single beastman at my lineman, and now all of a sudden he has a 2-die block where he normally would only have a 1-die block, which gives him a bit more flexibility in catching up with my players.
I agree. And I'll say it again, like, I think if he's able to get the knockouts or the injuries early in the game, I think it's going to go a long way in his favor.
Yeah, I agree. I won't put a prediction since I have a stake in this match, but yeah, everything that was said, I think I agree with. Alright, so the second match is the Toomey Aches versus the Stupid Stunties. Now, Arkin, since this is, you have a hat in this ring, we will save you for last. And Skilfer, why don't you go ahead and start this one?
Okay, well, I think this is going to be an interesting match to listen into, at the very least. Regardless as to how it goes, just given the 2 personalities that will be involved in it. That being said, coach warfare aside, I believe that this will be an interesting match. Dorn is going into week 3 with the worst record in the league. He definitely has some...
A lot to prove.
yeah, he has a lot to prove with those. The Tumiakes have not had a very good showing in either of their previous two matches. The Tomb Guardians have not really impressed a whole lot, and you could make the argument that they haven't had a lot of opportunities to do so. They have had the unfortunate luck of getting knocked down or out very early before they're able to actually be effective. Given that Nemo's stupid stunties are at this point very obviously geared towards injuring and just doing as much damage to the enemy team as possible, I'm going to have to give the advantage to stupid stunties because Tumiakes has proven itself to be a lot more fragile than one would have originally thought that they would be going into this league. And that's where I stand here.
That's where I disagree. I mean, this is the brother versus brother match, and
Yeah.
I think we all know what Nemo and his goblins are their game plan is, and I think from this point on we begin to counter that because he's out there to just hurt people, and
Yes.
that's going to be his undoing in the long run because we know the tools that he has to hurt people. So what do? We take out those tools, force him to use other tools, and I think that's where Arkin will come out. I think it's going to be a 1-0 victory for Arkin and his Tumiakes because I just think he has the advantage on it. Now that being said, it's going to become a positioning game. If either team makes the wrong positioning decisions, it's all over for that team. So
I agree. I think that if Dorn can position his units and his pieces in such a way to maximize the amount of blocking he can perform, having more high-strength players than the two trolls, and having more high-strength players than the other goblins, minus the fanatic, which has proven to be relatively unreliable, then I think that because Arkin has showed that he can win, he can play the Bashy game. And if the rolls don't go in his favor, then the rolls don't go in his favor, but he can play it. So if he can take out those tools early on, I think this match is going to be a 2-0 in Tumiake's favor.
Wow. All right. I don't really want to make a prediction because I'm never really sure. When it comes down to well, when it comes down to Nemo, my brother, it's always come down to who can get under each other's skin better and more effectively. And so,
Well, like I said, this will be a fun match to listen to.
oh well, it definitely will. But I think it's gonna boil down. It's gonna boil down, in my opinion, to if I can get it. If I can get certain roles to work in my favor, if I can get the right assists with the positioning, and more importantly, it's gonna boil down to how long that chainsaw is gonna stay on the field.
I'm just not convinced that you have Nuffle's blessing in any sort of capacity this league yet.
Oh, I don't think I do either. I wholeheartedly agree with that statement. However, it really matters with 5 strength can beat out something with 2, and if armor of 9 can beat out something with 7.
Yeah, I think if you can force this into a punching match, you have definitely the advantage there.
And that is the advantage that you, with just Nemo's coaching style, is he plays very, very aggressively, whole-handedly. And if he tries to do that against the Tomb Guardians and such, it could very easily come back to bite him very quickly.
Well, and Straum and Schmoopy have both been able to witness that my Tumiakes can change from offensive to defensive very, very quickly, and vice versa. And so,
They also haven't proven themselves to be able to do much with ball possession, which is why my
well,
advantage still leans over to them. I'll happily be proven wrong in this instance, but that's where my advantage goes.
and that's fair. I definitely agree. My team's barely been able to hold the ball, but granted, my team's also been able to stall a ball as long as possible. So, if I'm gonna be honest, if I'm allowed to make a prediction, I almost want to call it a 0-0 tie.
Could be.
But
I mean, if half your people are injured or dead, that might happen on both
if
sides.
it's not a 0-0 tie, it'll probably end up being a 1-0 for either team.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah. All right. So we can move on to the next game, the cold-blooded root beer versus the basic team. Now, Catter, since you have a hat in this ring, we will save your comments for last. Arkin, go ahead and take this one away.
This is the humans versus the lizardmen, correct?
That is
Yes.
Correct.
Once again, after having to go up against basic team in week 1, I would have to say that the victory will go to Shmoopy for no other reason than his team has become incredibly bashy with 3 level ups with guard on an ogre that already had the mighty blow because it's an ogre, on top of turning 2 of his linemen into blitzers with 1 level up. It's honestly going to boil down into if he himself can prevent that Croxagore from doing as much damage, which I wholeheartedly believe he can if he plays his cards right with a guard ogre and essentially 6 human blitzers running around the field. So I want to say it's 1-0 without a doubt.
I think it's going to be an interesting match. If Shmoopy can get around the lizardmen to get at those skinks, then it's going to be quite interesting. But he does have a lot of block, and that could be a problem. However, don't underestimate lizardmen's strength advantage and the amount of 2-die blocks that can be thrown. Lizardmen have a lot of viability in movement, so it's going to be it's going to be hard. It's actually going to be impossible for the Shmoopy's humans to outrun the lizardmen because they can move just as much and they're stronger. What is going to save Shmoopy's humans is the amount of block that he has. Even with 2-die blocks, you see it all the time. Skull, attacker down and bulk down show up a lot, or 2 bulk downs show up a lot. And that can really be a hindrance, and that can really burn Catter's rerolls. But I think with the right positioning, and again, this is another match where both coaches take a lot of risks. I think whoever takes the most important risks and forgoes on the stupid risks, they'll probably come out on top. I think it's going to be a 1-0, but I'm not sure which one is going to win.
Well, I think Shmoopy comes in with the just overwhelming advantage in terms of experience that his team has at this point with all the block and everything. Catter's cold-blooded root beer has not accumulated a single level up to this point, and just based on that, I feel like the basic team comes with just a slight advantage just onto the field inherently. Given that advantage can evaporate immediately based on positioning. As you said, the lizards can the sources can keep right up with any of his humans as far as movement's concerned. They outmatch them in terms of strength, and his skinks can run further and have the better agility with stunty and everything than the humans have. In regards to that, the best thing that Shmoopy can have going for him is like just really the same thing with any team versing lizards, and that is trying to eliminate as many skinks as possible as quickly as possible. If lizardmen don't have the ability to pick up the ball, then they can't do anything with it. That's just what that comes down to. I think Catter comes in with a disadvantage, but Catter is also he is a very good coach overall when it comes to getting around complicated things, and I think if Shmoopy doesn't position himself correctly, I think Catter will very quickly and fully take advantage of any gaps and Schmoopy's positioning with that. So overall, I'm going to give the advantage to the basic team at 1-0, but it could very easily turn the other way, all based on whether or not Schmoopy can position his players correctly.
Yeah, this is actually the match of the week or the matchup of the next couple of weeks that I'm most dreading. Just because of the amount of bash that he is, the blocks and whatnot, the level ups that Schmoopy has accumulated. Now he is down 2 players? So
No, Schmoopy's not down anyone.
No, I'm down 2 elves.
I thought Schmoopy
check.
was
I believe Schmoopy is actually down a player. No, Schmoopy is not down anyone. He had a lot of injuries, but none of them were all badly hurt. No actual missed games.
I thought he had a death the first game.
That was week
he
1.
replaced that. He replaced that player.
Did he replace that?
He's
Okay.
got the good money rolls too.
All right. Well, I'm mistaken on that then. But still, he's proven to himself to be a thoughtful, tough coach, and I think it's just my hardest matchup. I'm not going to say which way it's going to go because I'm not going to psych myself out on this either. I have a lot of advantages that he doesn't have, and I also, between the 2 leagues that we've played, I still have yet to lose a match. So this could be my first loss. Who knows?
Right, and with that, we go on to the last match of this upcoming week, which is Clan Thrust Plunder versus the Bastards of Uruk. Now, Skilfer, since Bastards of Uruk are your team, we will come to you for your comments last, and I'll start. I think this is going to be an interesting game. I will preface this by saying I believe this match is going to go 2-0 for Bastards of Uruk. Simply because of Clan Thrust Plunder being down a Black Orc, which it goes a long way to negating the strength advantage that orcs possess. And not only that, but this is not going to be a very bashy game. Skilfer has proven that he can definitely keep out of the bash and keep a lot of his players up. He's effective with his elf screen. He's effective at passing. I think that the amount of risks that he takes could put him in a little trouble, but he generally saves his rerolls for those risky maneuvers. And overall, I think that Asylum, the coach of Clan Thrust Plunder, just really needs to work on his positioning game a little more. He gave up a couple of serfs that could have really helped him in the last game. He is not very effective at protecting the ball carrier, and that can really hurt him in the long run. So I think this is going to be 2-0 in for Bastards of Uruk.
All right. I don't know what the score would be, but I definitely want to say it's in favor of Skilfer's Elven team, purely for the fact of how many players Asylum's down that Black Orc. However, I don't want to make any promises on that, considering he has 100k extra cash that he has yet to use, so he could easily replace a single anything if he wanted to. So that is something I want to consider. Who knows what he can do with that, but I'm still gonna say it's slightly more in favor of Skilfer's Elven team.
All right. I agree that it's going to probably end up being a victory with Skilfer's High Elves. It does come down to the positioning and ball control, and it depends on how the rolls go on this one. The elves can seriously stay out of the reach of the uh, of the orcs. But if Asylum does break through a screen, he can do some major damage, and he can start doing the bash. So I think if Asylum can get the bash, it's going to go south for the bastards in no time. So, but I still give the edge. It's probably going to be a 2-0 victory again. But Asylum can come out of this with at least one score if he plays his cards right.
Yeah, I think if Asylum can really force the bash and, as you said, break through that screen and force the bash, he could easily come out with a victory on this one if he gets proficient at it. He was in the last league with his Amazon team versus your Skaven team. He was figuring out how to put the bash on, and he was whittling them down. He said in that game he started that too little, too late. But he has experience playing those bashy teams against more agile teams like that.
Agreed.
Skip, what do you think?
I'm down 2 line elves for this match, but those will be replaced with journeymen, which isn't too much of a hindrance for me. At all, really.
Except for the loner rerolls.
Yeah, well, that being said, generally speaking, I'll put them in positions where I'm not going to really care. I mean, that's what I did with my last loner. From the last match when I versed you, I never had to reroll them once. But going forward, I think that Agility 4 and Elven bullshit is really going to carry the bastards in this one, to be honest. And I personally feel like I'm getting, more and more the more games I play, my grasp on positioning well, playing more conservatively on defense and such like that. And also in this match, as opposed to the match against the Lizards, I don't have to play quite as conservatively either, as I was, because I was concerned about losing a blitzer after losing the lineman because I didn't want my funding tied up with that. But now that the bastards have an apothecary, that's not so much of a concern anymore at all, really. In addition to that, I believe the Elven throwing game is very, very, very strong. And with the mobility advantage, after seeing Asylum's performances the previous 2 weeks, I'm not yet convinced onto whether or not he will be able to keep pace with his orcs. The big thing for me is going to come down to how early and how many elves he can take out of the game, really. If he's able to limit the effectiveness on my screen, that's the best way to do it. And in addition to that, it limits the amount of moves that I can make each turn. And that's how Galen beat my Dark Elves in the Open League, was by using a full complement of very good, strong orcs, and just beating my elves in until I was down to like 5 players. And there's not a whole lot you can do against a team that's only an orc team that's only down 1 person when you're down 6.
Yep, it's gonna be it's gonna be an interesting game. It might be I'd say it might be the biggest upset of that week if Asylum can pull over a victory out of that one.
Could happen. The rolls could just not be in my favor at all. It could happen easily. In regards to that, especially on kickoff events, I have not really had any kickoff events gone in my favor, really in Blood Bowl at all, since I started playing, which is something. But
well, they're bound to that wind will change eventually.
Yeah, I think the most important game of this upcoming week, the two most important games, is Uh, the brother versus brother, Timmy Aches versus Stupid Stunties. If Arkin can get that win on his belt, that'll be very
That'll
beneficial to
definitely.
him. But the other one, the number two, the humans and the lizardmen are tied for the number two slot right now in the league, and they're going head to head. Somebody's going to be number two after the end of this week.
I mean, unless you
Well,
tie.
Straum's Icemen are pretty high up too. Or are they like the same rank?
I'm currently number 1 in the league with no losses.
Yeah,
I
he
have
has
6
no
points.
losses or ties, all wins.
But both second place contenders are with Cat and Schmoopy have 1 win and 1 tie each.
I mean, that's why I also put Straum's game in as a real big contender. If Galen pulls off the upset, that'll be something.
Right.
Yeah,
And that'll
it's
put
safe
me-
to say that every match has its equal amount of weight on its shoulder for what the future holds for the league.
We're still pretty early in the league, so stuff like that's gonna be the thing for a while. All right, well that is the predictions. So that is the main inaugural season wrap up. We do have a couple of interesting things that happened in the Open League, which we can talk about very briefly. Skilfer, go ahead and talk about the Open League.
Okay. Well, Victor had his opening matches in the league this previous week. His human team came in, faced off against the Skaven, the Slippery Shits, which was my team initially. Well, it's still my team, but that was the first team that they played. And that match went 1-3 in the favor of the Skaven team. The humans came in at the end as Victor was figuring out how to really get a grasp of what his team was capable of and whatnot, was figuring out the concepts of the cage and was able to make a score in the back, largely in part to the Skaven being inept at picking up a football. The following match, I entered in a fresh orc team called the Blood and Booze.
Dwarf team.
This-
Dwarf team.
Yes,
No.
dwarf team. What did I say?
You said orc.
Oh, yeah, dwarf team. Thank you. The Blood and Booze. This would be the first Bashy team that I have ever coached, and that match was a 2-0 loss for Victor's human team.
But wasn't it also a concession?
Yeah, it was a concession in the final turn of the match, as well, on his turn 16, which was the very last half of turn 16. It was conceded.
The other two matches were Schmoopy versus Galen, and that was Smoopy's High Elves, I believe, versus I don't even know what Galen was playing, to be honest. But
Yeah.
I know that the Galen ended up conceding. He had very bad rolls. He just didn't have a good team makeup that he liked, so he conceded and deleted that team. Which, it's unfortunate. You can't see a team develop when that happens. But it's understandable. If you don't like the team, then you're not going to want to play the team. So you might as well go find something that you are going to enjoy playing. And in that, Galen, he has his troll in the dungeons. His it's an orc team, I believe, right? Yes.
Yeah, troll in the
Yeah, I
dungeon
believe
doesn't
so.
work.
Yeah. So he went up against my freakishly tall halflings, and gave me a pretty good run for my money on that. And I had a couple chances break away, but for the most part, he bashed and tied my trees up. To the point where the trees really couldn't throw over the orcs, so he came out the victor. So the halflings are now 1-1. They're not undefeated anymore.
Souls in the Dungeon are undefeated at 3-0.
They are. Both them and my Flaming Hams and Flapjack Skaven are undefeated.
So Pain Train is undefeated.
Yes, the Pain Train is undefeated in the one game it has played.
Yeah, I don't count one game.
I'm not counting blood and booze or slippery shits either. So.
Yes, I do plan on putting up the Pain Train in some more games, because really the Pain Train just has no breaks, and it must continue to have no breaks.
I'm very interested to keep playing around with the dwarves. I think that they are a very amusing team to use.
Kind of like me and the halflings.
Yeah, pretty much. And they're just nice. After my time with the Dark Elves, Frenzy is just fun. It is just a fun tool to have.
Frenzy is in fact very fun. But that was a short bit on the Open League. This ends the weekly wrap-up. Again, my name is Straum, and and Dorn. We're very happy to have you listening or watching, and we will see you guys next week for the next wrap-up.
All right. Have a good evening, everybody.
That was. Stop, bro.